A squatter is someone that possesses a legal right to remain in a particular territory. Now, this is kind of how it works in the natural today, because it happened to my grandfather and my grandmother. They had a lot of acreage in Mississippi, and I can remember as a child, we would pull up to my grandparents' house, and I would be all excited to take off running through the woods and see the horses and the cows and just spend time in the country atmosphere. But there was one time that we drove up, we hadn't been there in a couple years, and I noticed right off the bat, as my family noticed together, there was a trailer house at the very back of back behind my grandparents' house, and someone had pulled a trailer house right next to their pond. And of course, the first thing that we did was ask Grandma and Grandpa, who's living in the back of your house? And then Grandpa proceeded to tell us a story as to how a couple of years back, someone had pulled a trailer back at the very back part of their property. Well, Grandpa went down there and told them that they had to get off of his property. And they said, oh, well, we'll just be here a few more days. And then a couple months later, Grandpa went back and talked to him again and told him that they needed to get off his property. And they said, okay, well, he just wasn't aggressive enough to tell him to get off of his property. He just kind of kept putting up with it, giving them a little bit more time. Well, a year and a half passed, and then they decided to pull their trailer up from the back of the property right up next to the water. And it was only like maybe 100 yards away from my grandparents' house now. So Grandpa proceeds to walk down to the water and tell them, you need to get off of my land. And then they said, well, you'll have to take that up with the courthouse, because now we've been given legal access to remain on this property. Well, I mean, you can imagine what my grandfather thought. Well, we'll just see. I'm sure that was going through his head. We'll just see about that. So he went down to the courthouse and talked to the sheriff. And the sheriff said, Mr. Montgomery, they're right. They've been on that land long enough. They have legal access now to that property. And he said, well, how do I get them off my property? He said, you're not going to be able to get them off your property. They now have a legal right to be there. Well, thank goodness, about 2 years down the road, they decided that they would uproot and move to another state. We were all rejoicing that they moved on. But you know what? If they hadn't decided to move on, they would have still been there, because my grandfather had no legal right.